After this very interesting section about the Facebook algorithm learning phase, I will now show you more insights about how the actual Facebook equation works to decide which advertiser is going to win an auction. Okay? To understand that properly, first we have to be aware of the effect that for every single time, for every single impression, will it be on Facebook mobile newsfeed, on Instagram stories, on Facebook desktop right column, or wherever it is, for every single impression, in the back end, there technically runs a real-time auction between all the advertisers that bid for this impression, okay? And based on several variables, the algorithm decides who is going to win that auction, okay? And only if you as an advertiser win this auction for an impression, then your ad is going to be displayed, okay? So it's the same method as if you want to buy a car, an old timer in an auction, okay? You say, I'm willing to pay $100,000, and then there's another one who says, I'm willing to pay $120,000, and then you say, okay, but I will bid $125,000, okay? And then actually the person wins who has the highest offer. In Facebook advertisement, thankfully, it does not only depend on the actual bid, okay, because that would be terrible, because this way, if you have a lot of budget, you would win every single thing, okay? Imagine that you're Coca-Cola and they have millions and millions of advertisement budget. They would win all the auctions, but that would not be good, of course. Therefore, there are other variables that the algorithm takes into consideration in order to decide which advertiser is actually going to win this auction. Sounds interesting, right? So, now let's explore what are the big categories of variables that the algorithm really takes into consideration in order to decide which advertiser is going to win an auction. Now I'm going to present you the final equation that the algorithm applies. Ta-da! So in the upper part, I show you the equation, and then in the lower part, I also present you some recommendations that you could apply to your own campaigns in order to get the best out of them, applying this equation. But let's go step by step. Let's start with the equation. You see, basically 3 categories. The advertiser bid, okay, as I said, very similar to what we had in the car example for an old timer, but it is multiplied by the estimated action rates, okay. Therefore, here Facebook algorithm takes into consideration the probabilities of that a specific person really realizes the conversion that you're aiming for, which is super interesting, right? So they have probabilities in the back end where they calculate how likely is it that you show it to this specific person, that this specific person realizes a conversion, for example, a purchase. That's super interesting. And the multiplication of the advertiser bid with the estimated action rates is then added the user value, okay, and the user value is further subdivided into ad quality and ad relevance, okay. So taking all those things into consideration is the final total value that you see on the right, and if this total value from you is higher than from a competitor, then you're going to win the auction, okay. To compare this auction system with the auction system that Google applies in Google AdWords in their search engine marketing possibility, here they mainly have a multiplication of advertiser bid multiplied by quality score. Okay, and the quality score ranges from 1 to 10 and stuff like that is also further subdivided. But in Facebook, you see, it's a little bit more complex even. Okay, it's not just the bid and the quality score. No, it's the advertiser bids multiplied by estimated action rates and then added the user value. Okay, the user value, as I said, is not only the ad quality but also the ad relevance. So that's important for you to note that the relevance score is something that you should not 100% neglect. Okay, I know I'm also not the person who primarily takes a look at the relevance score. I primarily focus on my performance data. So how many sales did I achieve? What's my cost per add to cart? What's my cost per view content? I agree. I primarily focus on those performance-based data. But however, if things are not going well, I try to understand also the relevance score, the positive and negative feedback to my ads, because this ad quality and ad relevance is something that the algorithm really takes into consideration. Okay, that was more about ad relevance, but let's talk about ad quality, which are the two sub variables for user value. The ad quality, for example, means if you have an ad that has too much text in the image, okay, this will punish your performance, because at the end, if you have a total value that is not competitive with others, at the end you will not. First, your CPM, your cost per mil, would increase, so it's going to be more expensive to reach 1,000 people. Okay, plus you are not going to be able to reach the real persons that are the real targets that are interesting for you, because you would lose all the auctions and other advertisers would win them with better ad quality and better ad relevance. So, and of course that was just an overview of the most important categories, but there are many more variables. In total, right now Facebook takes into consideration more or less 165 of those sub variables, and they fall into each of those categories. For example, how could we manipulate the estimated action rates? Okay, not that easy, right? But there are tricks. Like, for example, we could use an existing post from our organic page, which has already had 100 likes, 220 comments, 10 shares or something. This has already received some social proof, and Facebook obviously benefits those ads that already have historical background. So they already see that, okay, this ad at least gets social proof, gets some engagement, gets some interaction, and therefore the estimations for those ads, for example, when you use an existing post from your organic page, this will of course benefit your total value. Another thing that you have to have in mind here is imagine that you run an ad set for a couple of days and it has already received very good performance, and then you launch another ad set that starts from scratch, and then you compete those two, let those two ad sets compete against each other. Well, the very first one is more likely to have higher total value and therefore get better results, because it already has historical data, and therefore the estimated action rates are going to be better. Advertise a bit. The last thing that we have not talked in detail about this equation. Well, here we could really try also different bid strategies. You know, earlier they were called automated bids and manual bids, and now they're called lowest cost strategy and target cost bid strategy. With the lowest one you have bid caps. So that's something that we can play around, but we're going to cover that in a later video as well. So that was it from the equation, and let's talk very quickly on what are the recommendations that Facebook gives us to really improve our performance based on knowing the equation. And I got those recommendations from the guides, the official Facebook advertiser guides in their advertiser help center. Okay, so the beginner, intermediate and advanced one. And here is a little summary, so you can save the hours of reading the material and just apply those this summary here. So when we're talking about bid strategy, okay, of course, what you can do to have higher total value and make sure that you win the auctions is, well, bid higher with manual bids, which are now called target cost bid strategy. Okay, so you could play around, test that in an A/B testing. Okay, but you could also test different optimization events. Do not optimize only on purchase, but also try add to carts, view contents, or even initiate checkouts. to really play around with this advertiser bid, which is, if you leave it in an automatic or in a lowest cost level, it will be derived from the optimization event as well. So that was it for the bid strategy. Talking about targeting, what does Facebook actually recommend us to really get the best out of our performance? Well, if we remember that the Facebook algorithm needs 50 events each week per ad set, therefore they recommend us to really work with broader audiences to let this algorithm optimize on the right area within an audience, okay, and not work with very narrow ones, but rather go into broader audiences. I'm not saying whole Spain, like 26 million Facebook profiles, but also not just 10,000 people when we're talking about prospecting. But let me go into more detail on the right audience size in another video, okay? What is super important is that we do not fear, but we also don't want auction overlap too much. What does auction overlap mean? Well, if I show my ads to women in Barcelona, and then I also show my ads to people that are interested in fashion in Barcelona, well, apparently there are many women in the second audience as well, and therefore there will be an overlap. And of course, it would be optimal to reduce this overlap and rather combine it in one ad set where you can collect those 50 optimization events. Last recommendation here, based on the equation and derived from the Facebook advertiser guides. Okay, when it comes to creatives, we really want to fight creativity fatigue. Creativity fatigue means that people get bored from seeing the same ads over and over. Therefore, they recommend us to update our ads at least every 2 weeks. Okay, if we're investing high budgets, even once per week or every couple of days. But in general, they recommend to update your ads at least every 2 weeks. And last thing is that video first. That is a trend that they now promote a lot. They also promoted that a lot in the last event I've been in Brussels. And it actually falls into the category of user value and then ad quality. And if you have an ad that's a video versus an ad that's just a static image, the video will get benefits and the photos will get a little punishment for not being super engaging, for not being dynamic, and therefore the video helps you to really get better results. Also important for you to know that key account managers of Facebook now recommend to have in each ad set at least one video ad as well, to apply, to play this equation and to understand that the video ad will get a benefit. So to sum up, what are the 3 key elements that the Facebook algorithm takes into consideration when it decides which advertiser is going to win an auction? Well, the advertiser bid multiplied by the estimated action rates, and it's gonna add also the user value, and the user value is subdivided into ad quality and ad relevance. Down here, I have provided you some conclusions that I have derived from the Facebook advertiser guides, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing your results increasing based on those recommendations. So thank you very much and see you in the next video. Goodbye.